There we go. And see how it goes. I've got a few minutes before I gotta feed the dogs, but I wanted to get back on and do or attempt to do a stream from my new box. I attempted to, I think, within the first week of having it, but it's been a lovely experience so far. I've been really enjoying upgrading my gear and actually having some power. Holy shit. But there's, it's one of many reasons why I haven't been producing a lot of content in the last few weeks. I can't even watch the OBS stream die on me. I don't know what the fuck is going on. I know my internet's good. Like, we have pretty fucking fast internet. I don't know if it's certain times of day or what exactly about it causes all of the frame drops. It's been something I've been trying to debug for a while now because it was happening on the previous box, which was a lot lower power than this one. But just like that one, I'm, able to make perfectly fine videos on my machine and then upload them, and then I actually have a really high quality product. And a lot of it seems tangent on, because it's one thing to have fast internet and like good upload speed. That's another to like have consistent internet, right? Like have it measured out like constant rate over time. And I just have not been experiencing that, and I can watch that anytime I try to go stream. I'm getting countless drop frames, and I don't think it's on my end at this point. I think it's on the internet company. So I do apologize, but I'm here. I'm not going to stop myself. I'm just going to rant and get shit out there. So, game development, right? And actually, I should make sure that my my settings are all good here. And trying out a lot of different ideas. And also spending a lot of time playing fucking Dwarf Fortress. Holy shit. What a fantastic game. In particular, the Steam release, which has definitely opened up the accessibility of the game, is a game that I discovered in college almost 20 years ago, right? And I was playing NetHack at the time a little bit during operating systems class. I'd be looking at the teacher like this, but then I'd eyeball my screen and I'd have NetHack going. And I was cruising through dungeons and doing a bunch of shit while my teacher was talking about threads, like in the operating systems context. And where was I going with that? I like to put NetHack and Dwarf Fortress side by side in a game history perspective. Because while NetHack is much older, this concept of the top-down tile-based interface is not new. I mean, we could even go back to chess. We could go back to Go. It's innate in the human psyche to represent structures as grids, because this allows for a lot of complexity to emerge from such a simple interface. Maybe I don't need to psychoanalyze why I enjoy RPGs, or 2D RPGs in particular. While the world is obsessed with 3D graphics. Things can be built up to that point. I do apologize if I'm grossing you out with all of my body cracks and stretches right now. In fact, I'm going to stand up a little bit. But what I was getting at was I really enjoy that particular uh, representation of things. And it's where, as a kid, my own ideas of like how I would represent a game, or if I were to make a game stylistically, how I would want it to look. Because there was certainly a transition between like drawing and creating art and moving on to learning how to write computer programs. It was a really big segue, like a 25 plus year and ongoing distraction from pen and paper. And what I really like is that these abstract ideas that like people all the way back in, to like Dungeons and Dragons would a group of people could sit down at a table and I had already been playing video games for years by the time I was introduced to Dungeons and Dragons. And the idea was profound at the time, not even considering the meta social implications of the game. But just the fun of knowing you have this almost infinite landscape, make creative decisions, and then watch the results of those creative decisions actually unfold, right? Like, chance of something going wrong in any given moment can vary upon a wide number of dependent and independent variables, right? So a lot of that was a distraction from some crazy shit that was happening in my IRL that I want to go over and get out of the way, because I haven't directly addressed what happened next on video yet. I've talked a little bit about the backdoor situation in a video where I was playing Doom and rambling, but one of the actually more than one major tech outlet has covered this story at this point. So let me go ahead and pull it up. Well, that's not it. That's my dashboard. Oops. Here we go. right here. GitHub projects are being targeted with malicious action in an apparent attempt to frame this researcher. Malicious commits found in ExoLab's GitHub account. They were submitted and pointed to a Texas-based security researcher. The malware does not exist, and the researcher claims someone is impersonating him. So they're talking about me, right? They're actually talking about literally me here. I know you're going to clip that shit. So this was also covered by Tech Radar. Leaping Computer did the most research. I'm actually glad for their article. This was actually fantastic. I woke up that morning saying, you know, like people were telling me I was in Leaping Computer. And actually, I forget really how things happen really back to back. It was a lot to take in, but I'm still not sure why. Because this was one of several events that occurred within a pretty short duration of each other. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a correlation between who did what and these events occurring, right? Like, even if they were all, you know, instigated by separate entities, those entities could be working in tandem with each other. And I have no idea who's trying to fuck with me. But I've been pondering how much I actually give a shit. And what I would be offering a reward for if I were to offer a reward. Because at the end of the day, nothing really bad happened as a result of this other than someone trying to fuck with me, right? But some of the other shit that's happened, definitely concerns me. And anyone who's trying to fuck with me on that level, don't let me find out. That's all I'm saying. Because if I did give enough of a shit to actually start trying to gather information, essentially what I would be offering would be money for information. It would be for knowledge of who did what, and also proof that I could verify manually and come to my own conclusion. If my conclusion matches the accusation, I think that would be something to justify a reward for. Of course, anyone can manufacture these sorts of things, right? So I'm careful to throw things out there without fully thinking them through. But it is a thought in the back of my mind because it is pretty serious. We don't want to live in that kind of world. So, you know, if you got beef with me, you know, just step forward and say what's up. Because I ain't got time for this shit. I'm trying to make a fucking game. I'm trying to get back to hacking and shit. I finally got a payout for some shit I did the other day. And it's kind of motivating to actually finally get a little bit of scratch for hacking efforts. Um, so moving on to game dev, right? Let's 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 mute that. Let's get the chat up. So I realized what I need to do with my game during my time playing Dwarf Fortress for something like 48 hours almost. It's taken literally 2 days of my life in the last week. And that's a good game, man. Like, that's one reason I had to stop playing Minecraft. Yeah, fuck yeah, Linux mentioned. Um, that's the only the only way I roll. Uh, so it's haters gonna hate, but I'm on Ubuntu. I'm actually on Ubuntu. And found myself dabbling with GNOME for the first time in like 10 years the other day, attempting to get a fucking Apple touchpad mouse working with gestures and shit. Because I had read some reviews on Amazon that people were able to do that pretty easily. And I thought, well, I'm smart enough. I've done pretty hard shit in Linux. Maybe I should give it a shot. I was trying to, sifting around for different mice and entry devices. Like I got this fucking curved Logitech mouse that I'm not using anymore because I just got this fucking signature series for oversized hands. I think this one's going to end up being the one that works out the best. I've tried everything to try and get rid of some of my carpal tunnel pain, right? And this is what I've landed on. But I was trying the touchpad out because I thought that would be a good option, but I couldn't even get the fucking gestures to work on Linux. And I tried all day, which at that point I said, you know what? I can just return this shit and get my money back right away. Like I bought it on Amazon, no big deal. Arch, by the way. Look, you're talking to an old dude, right? Like you kids and your Arch, you children, you absolute babies. I look at my beard. I am a literal gray beard. All right. I'm just gonna type in all caps right now, like the only meme that actually matters in the Linux department. I was about to say install fentanyl, but yeah, close enough. See that? Read that shit and get that through your head, because that's how we rolled back in the day. Shout out to Gentoo circa 2006. I went in college. It was like literally 18 years ago at this point. 20 years ago. I entered college 20 years ago. I say entered. I finished college also 16 years ago. But I went Fedora, Ubuntu, Gentoo. I found myself actually looking at Wayland recently, which a lot of my Hyper Linux friends had been talking about it for a while, but I hadn't like found a use case for why I might actually need it. And I found myself looking at Wayland as a result of trying to get this fucking mouse to work. So shit happens, but hell yeah. Really? Because of the Steam Deck? Dude, you're fresh. You are a baby. But welcome to the club. I actually really enjoy the fact that Steam Deck is Linux based. But as it turns out, so is Android, so is iPhone, so is Mac OS. Um, real talk, like a Mac machine is basically a fancy Linux box with a bunch of pre-installed apps and a reasonable, free app store. Say reasonable. I don't necessarily think it's worth the price of entry, but for people who have less time than money, it's a good option. As the saying used to be, Linux is great if you don't value your time, which is weird because it's ended up paying me pretty well. Well, they probably have some custom shit that you have to do. Um, they probably have some measures to like keep the security a little bit reasonable. Like they probably don't want people just open, like overwriting their firmwares or stuff like that. I've never actually used a Steam Deck or held one, to be honest. So I can't be sure, but like if I were to sit down with one long enough, I would probably figure a way to. The only thing I really care about doing with devices like that is being able to play like old school, like retro games and stuff. Because yeah, like generally speaking, they want you to like do things through the Steam store, but it could be probably fully unlocked, pretty easily. The entire company Steam is based on like modability, right? Like I think it was Counter Strike, one of the first games. But the entire Switch is yeah, yeah. Well, that sounds smaller than a Switch then, right? A lot of people like the Switch for the display. I almost never use my Switch in mobile mode. I've had it for years. It's a great console, but I also find that like I don't do a lot of like mobile gaming on the go. People who live lives where they travel a lot or they have to like they have regular places that they have to be at all day definitely benefit from like mobile gaming, right? But I don't think it's the superior gaming experience. Now, if the Steam Deck plugged into a big TV and I could like have a control like wireless like awesome controller that I could use with it, like I think that my Nintendo, what I really like about my Linux gaming stuff, and I haven't done it with my new machine yet, is that I've been able to play games on Steam using my Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which is pretty fucking awesome. Well, if Steam Deck uses apps, then it's Debian based, but I only ever read that it was Arch based. I don't know that it's actually based on Arch. They could be using something completely different. Um, one of the biggest gripes anyone could have about the Linux economy is how bad how badly fractured package management is, right? So I think on Fedora we were using Yum, which I think is Red Hat. Um, Jesus Christ, Steam is using KDE Plasma. Why is it so heavyweight? That's way too much beef for like what they need to do. That's ridiculous. I'm using XFCE4 right now, and I love it. I I've found it difficult to go to other things after trying so many. I've tried KDE, I've tried GNOME. I used GNOME for years in college, just because it was default. No, but it's probably run. They probably have some services running underneath the hood. Um, there's a way, like you can like certainly install the KDE framework if you have like a KDE app that you need to run, but you're using like GNOME, for instance. This happens all the time. I think it's libqt is KDE's UI framework. Like anyone can build applications using these frameworks, no matter like what operating system you're actually on. But anyway, GNOME, dude, I do not like how GNOME feels nowadays. Holy shit. I remember when GNOME was good and it felt more like XFCE is now, right? Like back in my day, Jesus, I'm old. Holy shit. Like GNOME in 2006 felt like this good, right? And it felt so good that I could even have like when I built my first computer back then, and I got an actual NVIDIA GTX 460, I think 360, something like that. It was like not even in the thousands yet. It was like real early card, but it's also a card that I ended up mining like 3 Bitcoin on that I don't have anymore. But no, not always. I mean, I grew up on Windows. I used Windows till like 2004. But I first learned about Linux as a result of, you remember that scene in the movie Hackers when I believe serial killer is pulling the books out of his backpack and letting Dade Murphy know what he needed to know if he wanted to succeed in this hacking game, right? And I think one of them was a book that was the Linux Bible or the Unix Bible or something like that. And I remember I found myself looking for text files on dial-up America Online 3.0 internet at some point. And I'm pretty sure I found some stuff through an old website called Temple of the Screaming Electron. Does anyone remember that? Or is that too old? Temple of the Screaming Electron was a awesome text repository with lots of book knowledge, many things inspired off of, contents of like the Anarchist Cookbook. I remember reading, like guides on how to steal from grocery stores and like lots of stuff on like I don't remember reading anything about credit cards, but there was a lot of stuff about phone networks too, because I did also find phreaking to be very fascinating. There's so much that I don't know, and it's always the stuff that like you feel tickled to like dig into, that you should dig into, because this is where you're going to make your most knowledge gains, right? Like what happened with my game development is I got stuck, right? I began to spiral out on this particular detail. So, and it's a detail that if I eliminate something, it's no longer a problem, and I can kind of continue on like actually building real stuff. Here's the problem, and here's how I solved it. So previously, when the player or any other enemy attacks and actually hits player or any other enemy, there would be the attack animation, and once that completes, so that's like one cycle, right? The damage animation would then trigger, and then it would play. That would be another cycle. However, I was doing this, or the way that I was attempting to do this, and actually, the way it's happening now is, and we'll figure out how to resolve this over time, is that what animation is supposed to play at any given moment is dependent upon the current state of the entity. And if we process all of the moves for a particular, like turn, and all of the entities in the game state are in their like final state for that turn, then we never have an opportunity to actually step through and render, like, let's say we have something more complex where you have just two entities, and player attacks enemy and then enemy attacks player. What actually would happen is the player would attack first, and then the enemy would register and do a damage animation. And then the enemy would attack, and then the player would do a damage animation, right? But what was happening through the system was it would show like the player attack wouldn't even render. It would just be the player damage. And the enemy, it would also just be the enemy damage. So we wouldn't even see the attack, right? That was the initial problem. So I began to try and solve it. And I came up with a really complicated system that I hadn't even finished working on. And it was really bogging me down, right? And I decided after a while I needed to start playing some games again. I got a PS5, and I got Elden Ring, and I got fucking Stellar Blade, which I haven't even opened out of the package yet. I'm sure that people are going to want me to stream that sometime. Got Black Ops 6. Can't wait to get on and kill some kids. But as everyone knows, I've been sinking a lot of time into Dwarf Fortress. And it's because, it's an itch that I've been needing to scratch for a long time, So I just, I've got time right now. I might as well do it. And it's a game where it's really hard to play it in, 10-minute increments like you can with, Black Ops. I find myself staying up to, 4 or 5 in the morning. It's just working on my shit. And I'm on another fort already, and it's going really well. But after putting in so much time, I had a realization about how to solve this animation crisis that I'm having. If I get rid of the damage animation, right? If I just straight up say, no more damage animations, we just wipe that out of the equation entirely. And so what are we left with? Previously, what I was doing, and what I think I'll still be doing going forward in order to just move on, is we process each entity's action during a turn. So we get to the final gate states. When we're in the final game state for the turn, we just set the animation based on state of each entity. Problem solved. So what does that look like? Oops. Let me move this over a bit. Almost dog dinner time. So I think, there's going to be a lot of small tweaks now that I do to really lock the feel of this thing in place. For instance, we needed probably a better default starting zoom. But let's place some enemies down, right? Actually, I gotta tune the speed a little bit too. Like there's gonna be a lot of little tweaks that I have to do. And so I'll probably end up, coming back to do those after take break to get some food and whatnot. But we're essentially setting the animation state at the end of the processing of each enemy's turn. Like the actual, like, you can think of it like Plato's, like ideals versus reality. Like I forget what that concept is called in Greek philosophy, but it was like the idea of like you have like the reality of the cheeseburger and then you have the idealized perfect cheeseburger as like two separate concepts. And this feels correct because just like in Dwarf Fortress, we have like this animation step that occurs. Well, they don't even have animation yet, right? But because I'm getting ahead of the gun. But here's what this is looking like. I'm going to end up slowing down the movement rate and the animation frame rate a little bit so that, or maybe speed it up. I have to figure out like the perfect tuning for the numbers there. Dogs are about to start tripping out over food, but they can wait a few minutes. So I went into my game's code and I commented out all the references. Is that every tick or based on turns? So no, this is based off turns. That's what I was just talking about. So like this is one turn, right? One turn. And I guess you could think of a turn like a tick, but I haven't exactly figured out like any scale of time in this game yet. That's because what I was getting at was underneath the hood, there's a lot of game state, right? Here, I'll show you. Oh, right, it's escape. So this is like the base world game state object in Lua, right? I'm building this game in C with a embedded Lua interpreter underneath the hood. I realized I should do this because it was going to be pretty difficult to do everything in pure C, but I realized I could have access to a lot of the things that I would want in C out of the box without having to like either re-engineer them myself or go out there looking for like the perfect like vector library or whatever to work with. I could just do it, just straight up. And actually, this experiment is going to prove useful going forward. I mean, even though I'm very deep into a software developer career at this point, I think it's given me a lot of insight to how one can build software going forward using Lua inside of C programs. So lots of potential there, right? Like I want to build other things with this kind of setup. But in addition to that, I also have this concept of code hot swapping, right? Oops. So wait, what is term? So check this out. So let me make clean. And then we're gonna list all. Oh wait, no, I have to unalias. Then we're gonna list all .c files. We're gonna pipe them into a program called enter with the make command. So anytime a change is made to any of the source files in that list, we're gonna recompile automatically. So let's give that a little demo, right? Like what's some code that would like cause this to not compile? I got so watch this. So I'm gonna go and save it, right? And look at that. automatically compiled. So that's not the hot reloading, right? But this is like something that's very useful in the process of hot reloading. So what I mean by this is let's first let me get rid of that so that that compiles again. But I have to open up another terminal session. So we have a recent compile, so I can build and run the game, right? Now, let's say I want to add something to the debug panel down here, like live while it's running. So check this out. So it's actually not that hard to do, but like, let me go to update debug panel. Yeah. So at the very bottom of the debug panel, I'm going to add hello Twitch. Look at that. I didn't even have to do shit. That was a hot reload. So if you don't know what a hot reload is, let's say you make some change to some code that's already running, and you want that change to get picked up by your program in real time as the program's running without having to close the program, without having to rerun the program, just by automatically reloading a shared library. One can change the contents of a running, well, it's literally changing the contents of a running program now that I think about it. So this can be very useful in development cycles because it actively increases your ability to engage in a feedback loop where you write code, test changes, verify that they work, and then move on. So when I'm in a rapid flow of things, this is like incredibly useful because I don't have to keep switching over to the compiler, typing make, hitting enter, making sure that, you know, my builds are synced up, or like having to clean everything. Sometimes you have to, sometimes you break things. The hot reload's not perfect, but in the instances where the code changes that you make are small and error-free, you can very quickly manually verify that, you know, they are correct. So like, let's say you have a lot of content that you want to add to a game like this. I could dump a lot of content and then have it all automatically load. Anytime that I have updates, I could have it downloaded from the internet and then automatically loaded. This could apply to a lot of different things besides just game development, such as malware, actually not malicious programs, etc. The first time I ever heard of hot reloading was watching Notch, the guy who made Minecraft, do a game jam session where he made a game. I forget the name of it off the top, but it was a first-person dungeon crawler. And I had, after that, seen a documentary where it showed him at his desk using the hot reloading available. And it was done through Eclipse. Eclipse has a JVM that offers code hot reload. And it's a very useful concept that I don't think gets talked about a lot or often enough. And it's really cool. I think more people should use it. So that's all I had to really get on about, is that I figured out how to solve my animation crisis. We just decided to get rid of damage animations entirely. So what this is going to allow for, though, is when all of the entities are in their final state at the end of a turn, like I was saying earlier, we can just check the state of the entity and then set the animation based off of whatever the final state is. So if two entities attack each other and they both live, then the final state is just going to be their default standing state. So we don't really have to do anything. If one of them dies, then the other will never get a chance to attack, and so his attack will never render. And we could just render the death animation right away. I think this logically is going to work out. So one of the big differences in my game with Dwarf Fortress, besides the fact that you're controlling one character, which I think Dwarf Fortress is supposed to have an adventure mode where you play as like either one or more characters or something. But while I haven't figured out exactly what the end game is here, we are working towards something that's going to be effectively like a dungeon crawling simulation type deal. So all things in time, right? One of the let me think. I gotta go here soon. Well, when I say an end game, I mean like a final vision. And I think you're right. Like, I don't think anyone has to have a final vision in order to make a good game. I think very often things can emerge out of just trying out new things. But let me think about like what the next steps are going to be here before I go, so that way I kind of have something locked in my brain. So actually handling attacks, right? Like, is at the moment I disabled damages. It'd be a little bit easier to test if they stayed still. Okay, so that one stayed still. Okay, so the idea is that we have to handle attacks, right? Like in terms of actually dropping an enemy's HP, maybe rendering some sort of like text above the enemy when they do get attacked, or the text above any enemy or any entity that gets attacked or incurs damage. We could also, it's like, oh, I forget, do I have picking up items working? Pick up key. Oh, it's W. Oh, okay. So all right, so here's how picking up items works. You walk over, hit W, which at some point I'm gonna change the key maps, right? Like I'm probably gonna make up, down, left, right, and everything. The left hand, what, Q, W, E, A, S, D, Z, X, C, or something like that. I have to figure out like, you know, what the keyboard mapping are. I'll probably end up using some F keys also to, you know, switch between modes and shit. A lot of decisions I have to make like that as well that totally have nothing to do with the game itself. It's just all user interface. But I guess you could say it's part of the game. It's interesting. I don't think that they're connected, but like it's a real aspect, right? I think of them as separate processes because in my head I'm like trying to work on the game world, but I also have to interface to the game world, right? Oh, so blocking, right? That's why I had to pick up the shield. So at the moment we have attack like on by default, but ultimately I don't want you to be able to attack with sword if you don't have sword. So, you know, like there's a lot of things like that. So what I end up doing as a regular developer practice, at least at the moment, sometimes even not when I have stuff going on, I'll work for a little bit. When I say a little bit, I mean like definitely not long enough to stream, right? Like maybe 10-15 minutes here and there, just trying to like piece things forward. And because of how well things are organized, generally speaking, I can jump pretty much any point of the project that I want to whenever I want to add stuff. What's happening? Commodore 64 set drive. So yeah, picking up sword to be able to attack. We need some sort of like message screen or log screen or like log window that like keeps a historical record of like, you know, running events that happen or things that, you know, might happen in the game, like, you know, a character dies or someone does something, or anytime you need some sort of informative feedback. I was complaining about drop frames at the beginning of this stream, but it's definitely been pretty good. We have less than 1% drop frames in almost an hour of streaming. Well, I've been sitting here talking to the audience for the last 52 minutes about a lot of different things. So that's what's up. It feels a little bit awkward, you know. Kind of throws off the flow of the conversation. Do you just show up to like random people's streams and ask them what's up, and then like as if you couldn't see what was up? Do I know you? I don't think I know you. That's another thing that's up. I don't know who you are. Who are you? And what's up with you? So, I mean, not much is up with you. You're definitely not streaming though. Um, not trying to be rude. It just what's up as an introduction. Okay. Well, I mean, how about you tell us about yourself? I'm just kidding. I'm about to go off stream, dude. If you had been paying attention, I was about to say I had to go. But you just got here and you're a little bit late, so no big deal. You can watch the rest of it. You can watch the VOD if you want to. I already kind of covered a lot of different things, so you really missed out. Anyway, I got some hungry dogs I gotta feed y'all.